I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.
Hello Horror Hounds, welcome to my horror house. After a first time viewing of the Tales from the Crypt movie Demon Knight, which I talked about in my previous video, of course it only makes sense to round out the double bill and watch Bordello of Blood, which I understand from the internet generally is less well received than Demon Knight. And with 2020 hindsight, you can see that Demon Knight has perhaps got cult favourite written all over it. And while Bordello of Blood is clearly, from any objective standpoint, a worse film, I would suggest that that's maybe an even cultier film. Let's dig into it. We open with an ancient vampire, Lilith, mother of all vampires, being resurrected, and then in very short order, she's shipped to America and she starts running a brothel of vampires behind the facade of a funeral home with which to lure in her victims. Now, this was released the same year as From Dusk Till Dawn, and both owe a clear debt to Vamp, which came out 10 years before that in 1986. And of all the three, vampires are hiding behind the facade of a legitimate business subgenre. Bordello of Blood is clearly the weakest of the three. It's even lesser than its own predecessor, Demon Knight, because although it has all the same elements of that first film, the humour, the irreverence, the gore, the nudity, all those ingredients are in slightly different ratios, and it's a tricky balancing act to pull off a horror comedy, and just too much of one and too little of another throws the entire endeavour off. Let's get this clear. Bordello of Blood is much more of a flat-out comedy that plays in the sandpit of horror than a horror comedy. Its saving grace for me, though, is that it is funny. It's really funny. Or the key player in it is really funny. So if you take the movie on its own terms, a movie which perhaps most people involved intended to be a horror comedy, but maybe through force of personality, let's say, the ship got turned into more straightforward comedic waters. Hell, it's a funny movie. It's got gore in it. It's got vampires in it. I can see that it's not a good movie, but I had so much fun with it. You'll recognise faces in here. The heroine of the piece is Erika Eleniak, who you'll know from Baywatch, and her brother, played by Corey Feldman, who's a bit of an a-hole in this. Younger brother goes off out into the night one evening and never comes back. Now, the police have got a backlog of missing persons cases, so they're going to take quite a while to get round to hers, so she hires a private detective who finds out that he, as did a lot of the other missing people, frequented this secret bordello under the grounds of a funeral home. I won't be the first person to note that Corey Feldman in this resembles quite neatly what you would get if his Lost Boys frog brother got turned into a vampire. Having seen him in the flesh, so to speak, a couple of years back at HorrorCon, I actually think that this character that Corey Feldman plays here is extremely close to his real life persona, and you can maybe take from that what you will. Erika Eleniak works for Chris Sarandon, he of Fright Night and Child's Play, and in this he plays a televangelist who, as with all televangelists in the movies, has something secret and sneaky and sinister going on behind the facade of his ministry. I wonder what that could be. We've got a lovely turn from Aubrey Morris, who is a genre stalwart. He's in A Clockwork Orange. He's in Life Force, for crying out loud. Blood from the Mummy's Tomb. He's in my favourite TV show of all time, Patrick McGowan's The Prisoner. He's absolutely wackadoodle in this, and you can't blame him for that at all. It's an absolutely wackadoodle movie. Why not just ham it up? Because just as all roads lead to Rome, in this film, all roles lead to Dennis Miller as Detective Rafe Gutman. This is the Dennis Miller show. If you get on with his character and how he chooses to portray his character, then you will get on with this movie. It seems that not an awful lot of other people on set did get on with him, or how he chose to portray his character, or the hours he decided that he was going to work, or the fact that he just decided to ad-lib pretty much and created a massive headache for people trying to get continuity shots of lines of dialogue to match what he decided to say on the day. And you can see all of this in the movie. There's a big chunk towards the end where they're clearly doing reshoots, and Erika Eleniak has got a wig on. I mean, an obvious wig to try and somehow approximate the hairstyle she had when they were shooting. And as ramshackle and as frustrating that makes the movie, it also makes it joyous because Dennis Miller's an absolute star in this. His detective is so laid back, so sarcastic. He doesn't give an F, and it shows. Let me try and give you an example right here.
You know what? Step outside.
You know, Zeke, not right now. Just not in the mood for a blowjob. You are not going to believe this, but I almost wore that tonight.
I have a particular Achilles heel in comedy for characters who are always angry and frustrated. So Larry David or Jeff Anderson in Kevin Smith's Clark's movies. I also have a soft spot for characters like this who are just so dry and caustic and spiky and mean to everyone. This guy doesn't have a heart of gold. He's just an asshole. And I loved it. I thought it was hilarious. If you don't get on with it, you won't get on with this movie, because this essentially is the movie. You're certainly not going to fall back on the villain Lilith, played by Angie Eve Hart, who... she doesn't work well on screen. There's no character there. Her vampires have no character. No one else really has a character. It's the Chris Sarandon, who is quality in everything he does, reaches Dennis Miller levels, and towards the end they have scenes together, and that's absolutely fantastic. And there's lots of practical gore effects again as well, like with Demon Knight. And where I praised it so highly in Demon Knight, you can take these instances of gore and effects and say, yes, these are really good practical effects, especially in the mid 90s, when everything was moving to sort of CG and looked glossy and slick and horrible, and all the practical effects look good and all the gore looks really good. But in a weird way, it's sort of sprinkled and peppered throughout the film like a seasoning rather than the point of it. The eye has left the horror ball and is firmly fixed on the comedy ball, and that's fine. It's a great comedy movie. I would say the effects are a little like the nudity in this. There's a lot of nudity in this movie. Yes, there are a lot of boobs. No, none of it is in the least bit erotic. So in a similar way, yeah, there are lots of great special effects, but they don't titillate that part of my mind that sort of gets activated by cool horror effects. So no, it's not as good as Demon Knight. The balancing act that Demon Knight performs is so much more nuanced and delicate than, well, they don't even try balancing anything in Bordello of Blood. They might have started off spinning quite a few plates, and then Dennis Miller comes in and wrecks them all and says, no, we're using this plate. I'm fine with that. I thought it was hilarious. I can completely understand why it might frustrate an awful lot of people who are perhaps hoping for an objectively good horror comedy. But if you want to see an asshole, insult and piss everyone off for 90 minutes. And if you want to check this out with some beers and some friends, this is exactly what this movie is designed to do.